Before we dive into the steps of implementing transition discoveries, we need to start with the foundation of all the work that we'll do together. This foundation is the Transition Discoveries Quality Indicator Framework. In the framework, there are 9 systems-level quality indicators of high-quality transition for young people with disabilities. Each quality indicator was defined through a multi-year statewide research project funded by the Developmental Disabilities Council of Pennsylvania. In this project, over 500 young people, family members, and stakeholders across schools, agencies, and community partners created the TD framework to describe the many aspects of high-quality transition. Importantly, the components of the TD framework strongly align with current evidence-based practices for secondary transition. Together, young people, families, and stakeholders shared about essential characteristics of high-quality transition and the practices, programs, and services across schools, agencies, and community partners that together contribute to high-quality transition. If you haven't already done so, download the TD framework. Take a few minutes to explore the indicators and their sub-indicators. Pick one and share about a related, really effective practice, program, or service in your district or community that happens right now to support young people in preparing for success after high school and beyond. Post your examples and stories in the chat below this video. Every team champion should post at least one example from their community. A central component of transition discoveries is the emphasis on systems-level action. This means that we approach transition through a connected view across youth with disabilities, family members, the school system, agencies, and community partners such as nonprofits and employers, and any additional community-specific stakeholders who play a role in supporting post-school success. In a systems view of transition, multiple parties work together alongside youth and families to support them in designing and implementing a plan to reach their goals. They also collaborate with youth and families to design and improve programs that support their plans. In the TD framework shown here, we have each of the 9 indicators and how they interact to impact transition practices, programs, and services at a systems level. Take a moment or two to review, and then we'll break down each component together. First, it's important for us to know that cross-agency collaboration, as defined by the TD framework, is considered a significant predictor of all other quality indicators in the framework. This means that as the quality of cross-agency collaboration increases, the quality of all other quality indicators in the framework increases as well. These relationships drive home the importance of a systems-level approach to transition. Another important aspect of the TD model is that there is mutual influence between cross-agency collaboration, family engagement, employment, and post-secondary education. They're all interrelated, so the quality of family engagement, employment, and post-secondary education is only as strong as the cross-agency collaboration that occurs to support them. At the same time, as the quality of these areas of practice increases, the quality of cross-agency collaboration increases as well. We see in the TD framework that there are other quality indicators that together represent a broad range of practices, programs, and services at a systems level. They're shown in the green shaded region here. All of those quality indicators have strong mutual influence over each other. As we expand and improve our practices, programs, and services at a systems level, youth development increases, which includes key skill areas such as self-determination, self-management, and self-awareness. As a result, we support high levels of youth engagement, leading to transition goal attainment and strong post-school outcomes. This is the core purpose of implementing transition discoveries. So, while the goal is not to improve indicator 13 and 14 compliance, by having and creating a strong network of practices, programs, and services around young people, families, and teams, you'll ensure that structures exist that result in meeting and exceeding compliance. So, with all of this in mind, let's talk about how to translate the TD framework into efforts to grow, expand, and improve transition outcomes at a systems level. Here we have the Transition Discoveries implementation model. There are 4 stages, and together they're designed to guide your district through capitalizing on current strengths in order to grow, expand, and improve transition practices, programs, and services at a systems level. In TD, in particular stage 1, it is not about evaluation. It's about gathering the information needed to create new practices, programs, and opportunities, particularly those that may have been dreamt about but haven't yet become a reality. As you'll see in the following stages of the TD model, this process is about creation and expansion. In order to do this, your team will first use the Transition Discoveries Quality Indicator Survey, also known as the TDQI, in order to gather the knowledge and experiences of youth with disabilities, family members, and transition stakeholders, all across schools, agencies, and community partners. This tool will aid your team in gathering data and connecting the dots between effective practices, programs, and services. We all know that great work is always happening, but it's usually done in silos. The TDQI allows your team to see what's working across the system, where, how it's done, and who's involved. It's through this that your team can then connect efforts to draw upon current strengths to expand and improve practices, programs, and services. We know that transition practices and outcomes are often the sum of many parts, efforts done in coordination by multiple sources of knowledge and support. The next video in this training series will explain all aspects of completing Stage 1. Based upon the data collected, during Stage 2, your team will identify one or more indicators from the TD framework and practices within them that are current areas of strength for your community. Based upon this information, your team will also identify practices, programs, and services at a systems level that can be expanded and innovated to support youth development, and this leads to high levels of post-school success. Your team does not need to analyze any of the data collected. This is done for you by the TD initiative. Your team will access the results through an easy-to-use data visualizer, along with prompts to guide you through making data-driven decisions. In this visualizer, key trends, highlights, and findings will be immediately available to your team without the need for any analysis. In the Stage 2 video of this training series, we'll explain this tool and how to use it. Before your team begins designing and implementing an action plan to expand and innovate practices, programs, and services, you'll first need to form a Transition Change Agent team, also known as the TCAT. The TCAT consists of several young people with disabilities, family members, and transition stakeholders, who together become an advisory board who provides feedback and recommendation on implementation efforts. During Stage 4, they will also lead a live virtual community action planning event with youth, families, and transition stakeholders from your community. It is this action that will result in your plan forward. The Stage 3 video in this training series will teach your team all aspects of establishing your TCAT. Now, let's talk a bit more about Stage 4 activities and resources. Stage 4 of Transition Discoveries consists of several steps. First, your LEA's TD implementation team will collaborate with the TCAT to host a virtual action planning event focused on one or more of your priority areas identified during Stage 2. At this event, there will be your team, the TCAT, and additional youth, families, and stakeholders from your community. These attendees may be both individuals who share their experiences through the TD survey and additional people who are just interested in getting involved with improving opportunities and supports in the community. Your team will utilize TD's specialized approach to virtual community action planning in order to structure your event. Here's how it works. Attendees break into groups and participate in 3 rounds of group thinking and vision board creation, each with a specific focus. First, the groups focus on identifying what works related to the priority areas identified during Stage 2 from your TD data. This first round is called discovering. The second round is where groups begin dreaming up big, awesome ideas for practices, programs, and services that could be done so that young people reach their goals now and in the future. This second round is called dreaming. This is when the groups come up with ideas for new opportunities at a systems level that could happen to support the priority area. The third round is where groups identify a few actionable goals from dreaming and the specific actions to achieve them. All of these creative efforts are captured in a virtual vision board. The TD coaches will support the virtual community action planning event by creating the vision board in real time as attendees think together. This will include the TD coaches adding text and visuals from the group conversations. This way, attendees can see their ideas connected and come together in real time. After the event is completed, your team begins the second step of Stage 4, which is taking the information from the community vision board and developing an implementation plan to achieve one or more of the goals created by the community. Your team will use a specially designed TD online planning tool to assist you in making your plan. You'll learn how to accomplish this process within the Stage 4 video of this training series. Now comes the time for the most important part of Stage 4, implementing your plan. Your team will continue to utilize the TD online planning tool and will have access to additional resources to support your implementation efforts. These additional resources include a set of 9 courses for stakeholders to learn about effective, evidence-based practices related to each of the 9 indicators within the TD framework. Teams will also have access to the Transition Discoveries curriculum with self-guided learning activities, lesson plans, and all the materials needed to implement them. Finally, your team will receive ongoing coaching and will participate in a community of practice with other communities currently implementing Transition Discoveries. All of these tools and supports are explained in detail within the Stage 4 training video. Before we wrap up this initial overview of Transition Discoveries implementation, let's review the roles of the LEA's TD implementation team. There are 4 primary roles in your team: the team champion, the transition stakeholder, district administrator, and agency or community transition partner. This last role is optional, but the rest are required in order to implement Transition Discoveries effectively. Your team champion is the one who becomes your team's internal coach and oversees implementation, making sure that all objectives are planned and met. The team champion should spend the most amount of time watching and reading the training materials, like this video, in order to get a strong understanding of the implementation process. They are the expert on the team of what needs to be accomplished. It's important to know, however, that everyone on the team is responsible for working together to plan implementation activities, track progress, and make decisions about next steps during each stage of Transition Discoveries. Through implementation, your team will be supported by your local coach, as well as a coach from the Transition Discoveries Initiative. Your local coach will be your primary support throughout implementation. The TD coach will provide your team with training materials and learning experiences as well. You will check in consistently with your local coach and the TD coach every month. However, each team will decide together if they wish to have more frequent support and guidance from their coaches. This concludes our introduction to transition discoveries. Now, watch the Stage 1 training video.